IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. On the podcast today, we host Tushar Shukla, a traveler, a listener, and a very multi-talented personality in general, as we'll find out. Tushar is taking us to the heartland of India and sharing experiences from his solo trip there. So let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Tushar Shukla, an avid listener and a traveler to the Musafir Stories. Hey Tushar, thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Saf. It has been a long time dream to talk to you. I have been following the Musafir Stories podcast for long, as you would have seen, because I keep sharing the episodes because I get so excited and I tell people to listen to them. And your podcast and the conversations have been really inspiring for me to also plan many of the trips. And I know it keeps on expanding my bucket list also. So thanks for all the wonderful episodes, and especially after COVID time, it has been really inspiring to sort of look up to what places one can visit. And what I find interesting was in each episode, even though we are within our daily routine of jobs and stuff and so on, but with each episode we get to travel to so many different places. And even if I have been to a place, with the conversation and the interesting things that come to light, I always feel like I have revisited that place or I need to revisit it. So thanks, Seth, for all the great content that you have been creating.
No, thank you. I think it's completely up to great listeners like you who have kept us motivated and kept us going, because we started this almost 7 years ago now as a passion project, and I'm really glad we've been able to add some value in terms of covering places of interest and points of interest in India. And Tushar, the intro I gave about you also was very brief and concise. You are a true champion of the podcast. You're a great listener who's always providing feedback. But beyond that, would you also like to add a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Saf. So I have been working in Bangalore in IT from the last 18 years. And apart from IT, some of my interests include cinema, music, blogging. And as you know, Bangalore is a cultural center, so one gets exposed to a lot of different things. So initially I did some theater as well. And over the years, I have been really passionate about blogging. So initially, I have done a lot of film reviewing and cinema. I also worked very briefly as an RJ for WorldSpace. And so currently, especially from the last 2 years, I have been working on a vlog. So it's like a YouTube channel where I review comic books. So I try to share the passion, especially for Indian comic books. Like over the last 1 year, I realized I have created a lot of content on that. And so I have a very active comic book connection. And apart from that, around 3 years back, I also wrote a non-fiction book on A.R. Rahman. That was around lockdown days. So after that, I have been trying to also work on a fiction book of sorts. So yeah, I know that's a lot, but that's how it goes, I guess. And yeah, travel and blogging is again another passion. So thanks.
Yeah, truly multifaceted, right? I thought I was doing a few things, but yeah, just listening to you makes me wonder what I'm doing with the rest of my free time. We'll make sure to link a lot of these resources as well, be it your channel on YouTube or your Medium posts or your channel on Medium where you post most of your blogs, so that listeners can check out the content as well. And now, in terms of where you're taking us to today, usually, you've been a listener, so you get the idea of the podcast, right? So we try to focus on a place, sharing your experience as to why you went there, when you went there, how you got there, things you did, etc. So, with that in mind, where do you want to take us to today, Tushar?
So today, Saif, I'm taking you and your listeners to the Indian heartland, the state of Madhya Pradesh, and where better to go to Madhya Pradesh than to the city of Indore and Ujjain. So now Ujjain has been on my travel wish list primarily for spiritual reasons. It's an important place in terms of ancient India and its coalescence of heritage, science, religion, and culture. It boasts not only of countless temples and the Jyotirling pilgrimage, the Mahakaal temple, it is also claimed or known as the ancient prime meridian of the world. So it is actually the intersection of where the prime meridian was, which is currently in Greenwich, and intersection of that and the Tropic of Cancer. So according to beliefs or according to some of the science theories, the Tropic of Cancer used to pass through Ujjain. It's currently located 34 kilometers from Ujjain in a village. So that's a science connection. And then also it has a lot of significance in Hindu religion, in spirituality, in mythology, to be known as the city where Lord Shiva resides. So there is a lot of worshipping, lot of celebration of Lord Shiva and his ideologies. And in if you step away from the religious context, it is also a place that gives you a lot of positive vibrations. And I'm saying this because I always wanted to go and experience it. And when I actually went to Ujjain, one can almost feel that kind of positive energy center and positive vibrations. And there is also a theory that the Mahakal temple or Mahakaleshwar is also known as the navel of the earth. So I know if we start discussing, these theories, then it might take long. But that was just a kind of an introduction in terms of what my fascination with Ujjain to be on my itinerary was. Other part was Indore. So Indore, as we have been hearing about it, Indore has been winning the Smart City Index award for a couple of years now. It is known to
Yeah.
be one of the cleanest cities that has a growing infrastructure. And it is always fascinating how we always hear about something and when we actually go and experience it ourselves. And this always happens when we travel, because when we speak to the locals, the kind of energy that they have, it really surprises you, and that's something that one only experiences when they travel. So I was in this auto ride. I was going back to the airport towards the end of my journey, and the auto driver was like an ambassador of the city of Indore itself, and he was very fond and he was very confidently talking how Indore has two parts, like a modern city where things can come up like industry and IT and so on. And it has the other side where they have these palaces, they have these street food places, and so on. So, to sum up, Ujjain being the spiritual part and Indore being the street food and the smart city, this was my fascination with planning this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different things to explore, and also very contrasting things, right? Like you mentioned, between Ujjain and Indore. Yeah, it feels like day and night almost. And yeah, I'm eagerly looking forward to the food scene as well. That has also been something that has been on my mind because we hear a lot about the popular bazaars and the street food markets of Indore.
Right.
So yeah, looking forward to jumping onto this itinerary and sharing your experience with the listeners. Now, in terms of the itinerary itself, can you also set a quick context of how long the trip was and what time of the year you did it?
Yeah, I did this trip in September. Since I live in Bangalore, I wanted to plan a longer weekend to Indore and Ujjain. So I flew in from Bangalore to Indore. What I did was I did a night flight so that I get full days for the trip myself. So I land at Indore in the morning on a Friday, and I keep Friday aside for complete Indore. And Saturday morning I take a short bus ride to Ujjain. I explore Ujjain, and on Sunday I come back to Indore and take a flight back. So pretty tight trip, but this is how I planned, and this was essentially my primer or beginning into the wonderful state of Madhya Pradesh. So what I did was I looked up some Airbnbs. I wanted to get the feel of the neighborhoods, and I luckily I found some very nice places to stay at, and also found some really nice local auto drivers to take me around the cities. Now, the best time to visit Indore, because it gets really hot, as you can imagine, in Madhya Pradesh, the central part of India. So, the best time to visit is October to March. The airport that connects you to these cities is Indore Airport or the Devi Ahilya Bai Airport. Now, if you're traveling by train, Ujjain will be also a very good bet because Ujjain Junction is quite famous and it's well connected to many Indian cities. Another point about Ujjain is that since there is a lot of religion and spiritual tourism that happens, it can get really crowded. So people that primarily go there to visit the pilgrimages and temples, they might look at staying near the railway station. And since in these kind of places, the stay and the expenses are often decided about the proximity to the main tourist spot, these prices also vary. So again, one should be vary about the visiting season, because in Ujjain you also expect a lot of crowds, a lot of tourism around the Sawan months of the Hindu calendar, that is July to August. So I was a little conscious about the timing that I don't travel there during the Sawan season, so I planned this in September. So this was just some of my pointers to plan this 3-day trip.
Okay, wonderful. And going by what you are saying, it also looks to be a very accessible city or town, right?
Yeah.
Connected well via both airways as well as train connectivity. And obviously, if somebody wants to drive in there too, it's definitely very, very accessible. Now, let's jump into the conversation. I completely understand that this is, like you mentioned earlier on, a primer into MP and MP travel, right? Depending on your tastes and how long you'd like to spend, it could easily be like an extended weekend like this, or a full week itinerary if somebody would like to
Definitely.
make this or one of these places as their base and explore it. Yeah, eagerly looking forward to seeing how your trip was here, given that this was an extended weekend itinerary. Do you want to jump into some of the experiences and how you went about them, Tushar?
Sure. So I reached Indore at around 11 a.m. On the Friday and proceeded to my Airbnb in a local auto. And interestingly, while I was chatting with the auto driver, he was telling me about the city. So what happened in my favor was the driver agreed to be my guide for the day as well. So I shared with him my places of interest, and I had gone with a very small kind of list for Indore, because I was very clear that I don't want to cover all the palaces, because coming from the city of Jaipur, I have a bit of idea. So how I started my trip was with the Ganesh temple, which is called the Khajrana Ganeshji temple. Since everything in in Hinduism it starts with Lord Ganesh, so it was a good starting point, and it was a very clean and pretty temple. So what I was really liked in Indore, I was traveling through it, is though all cities do have traffic, Indore also has those, but in some aspects you do admire the kind of order that they have within that chaos, right? So around the temples there was a certain sense of order and cleanliness which I like. Now the Khajrana Ganeshji temple is a pretty temple complex. It's surrounded by a small garden, there is a small lake, and there's a lot of clean walking areas, and it's typical around temples. You'll find a lot of sweet shops, and the shopkeepers are calling you out to buy prasad and flowers for the temple, and they offer the front area of the shop to be a temporary parking. So I was really enjoying that, because someone having grown up in North India, and these are things that just echo. So yeah, after this Khajrana Ganeshji temple, I proceeded to my most anticipated attraction, the Chappan Dukaan, or the 56 shops. So what I mean, I don't need to introduce anyone who's into Indian street food about Chappan Dukaan. So it's a celebrated street food market of the city. It is often known for celebrities visiting there. It is also known for the way they dispose the plates. So they have these dishwasher bins installed there. I had seen the place many a times in food blogs, but seeing it in all the glory, in the all the buzz and noise was a completely different experience. So
Yeah.
when you travel alone, you are also in this dilemma, right? Like you want to eat everything, but it's practically not possible when you also have travel ahead of you. So what I did was I just passed through all the places and then just cut short my, place things I want to eat there. So I visited things like there's a Johnny hot dogs there. He is quite famous to create or prepare some lakhs of egg sandwiches, and it says that he has also gone to Hong Kong to deliver some sessions on how he manages that. But yeah, it was a different take on vada pav. There is a lot of food items over there, so I did try like some uh, there's a thing that is made of American sweet corn, a light snack, and there is something that they create called kopra kachori, which is like a fried patty made with a filling of coconut and different spices. So, yeah, this what I liked about Chappan Dukaan was apart from the food that you taste, it's the visual delight. It's the complete experience, right? There's a bevy of colors that you see, like bright yellows and all different type of ice creams and so on. And the very vibe of the place was what really excited me. So this was Chappan Dukaan.
Yeah. Again, like one of the things, like you also mentioned, that stands out is the cleanliness, right? And no wonder that keeps getting called out every year in the annual surveys or
Yeah.
whatever that are done. And then very unique foods also, right? I mean, even like you've lived in a few different places, and I'm sure like some of these that you're calling out, either the bhutte ki kees that you mentioned or the kopre ki kachori, like you typically won't come across these in some of the other places, right? So that way, very unique food also. And while I was looking up to it, yes, that between Chappan Dukaan and Sarafa Bazaar, like roughly about 40% of the overall share of revenue from food-related businesses or whatever for the town, it comes from these two places, right? So
Yeah.
kind of shows the scale of the place too. And I'm glad that you got a chance to go there. And I completely hear your point about solo travel, right? At least if you're traveling with somebody, you could order two different things and then sample a little bit of both. And when you're solo, you actually don't have that luxury, unfortunately. So anyway, I'm still glad that you were able to spend some time here at Chappan Dukaan, or 56 shops. I mean, I don't know if that's the exact count now, but at least when it started out, there were 56 stalls or 56 stores that served food, right? And that's how it got its name. And then after spending some time here, where did you up onto?
Yeah, so I went to Gandhi Hall after that. So Gandhi Hall is an Indo-Gothic style building that will remind you of the old style railway stations of Lucknow, like Chahbagh or Purani Delhi or Kanpur railway station. So it has the typical Indo-Gothic and Mughal architecture style and the red brick color. Now, incidentally, I happened to hear about this place through a publisher's page who participated in a book festival going on there, and that's when I was like, "What is Gandhi Hall all about?" And uh, this place is often the spot for exhibitions. So when I went there this time, there was a handicraft fair going on, and this was a time with a lot of festivals coming up. So there was a lot of bright colors and handicrafts and saris that were being sold there. And I took a walk around the place, took a few pictures, and also dropped into the fair. Though it was primarily a lot of stuff that was meant for women. There was a lot of jewelry and bangles and so on. But nonetheless, I was just enjoying the bright colors and the vibes there. Now, what also interested me more was the royal touch that this structure and the building exhibited. So there's a grand hall inside. There's a huge stage, and there's stained glass windows, ornate window panels, and doors, frames, and artistry on the ceilings and the walls. So it's really fascinating that an old structure like that can be a living, kind of a venue to things like exhibitions, and it's a very thriving kind of culture that you see, and that's what excites me about small town India. Or I don't know if Indore can be called a small town, but I guess you know what I'm talking about. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this was
yeah, for
Gandhi
sure.
Hall.
Yeah, and for me, I think the clock tower, right, of the
Yeah.
Gandhi Hall, that also stood out, like you mentioned, in that very typical, I don't know, they call it whatever, the neo-Gothic style, or so. That way, it was beautiful to look at too, and I'm glad that you got a chance to make a quick pit stop here. And there's no dearth of royal palaces and all of that, right? The
Yeah.
place has had its share of kings and dynasties that have ruled here, so a lot of such heritage buildings are allowed, and it's good to hear that in terms of upkeep too, a lot of these are fairly well maintained. And after making a stop here at Gandhi Hall, what was on the agenda next?
So from here, I went to Lalbagh Palace. Lalbagh Palace, and each of these places, right? Like it might sound like there is Rajwada Palace, Lalbagh, and so on, but each of these places packs in so much, distinct quality to them. The way their structures are, the way the entire things that they house within those museums is just fascinating. So the Lalbagh Palace, it houses precious artifacts from the past, and there is royal collections that are showcased here, and the complete setup is modeled after Buckingham Palace. It has beautiful architecture. It is also surrounded by very spacious lawns. So I don't know what is it about palaces that are surrounded by these sprawling lawns that just calls out to me. So it brings in this old world charm, but there's also, the thing about it being so spaced out. It's not really, congested. Like sometimes when you visit, tourist places or even these forts and palaces in Rajasthan or other Indian states, you hear a lot about a place, but when you visit there, there's like long queue, and then
Right.
you're facing the heat, and it gets like a little challenging. But with Lal Bagh Palace, there was nothing like that, because the lawns provide you that cool kind of envelope. When you step in, obviously the dining halls and the royal kind of offices, it's just so fascinating. And I just looked at those, took a few pictures, and obviously we have to move on. So yeah, I spent some time there, admired the kind of scenery, the kind of rose plantation there, and yeah, left from Lal Bagh Palace.
Okay, wonderful. Again, like given your packed schedule, some of these have been like touch and go type of experiences. But if somebody wants to spend a while, it can easily be like a 3 4 hour type of excursion in each of these places, right? Given the amount of things they have, some of them might even have like little museums within the structures. So yeah, depending on what your preferences and what your taste is, you could easily extend these into longer trips. And after Lal Bagh Palace, is it time for a quick snack yet, or are you still do you still have a few places to cover off?
Yeah, so after that, I took a quick snack. It was nothing like a, planned kind of thing. I just wanted to try some street food. So I just stopped over for some poha, because the great part about Indore is you get poha all times of the day.
Yeah.
So I caught a quick snack of poha, jalebi, and chai, and then I was ready for another palace. But I was conscious that I don't want to spend all day, in palaces. So the
Yeah.
next stop I planned was Rajwada Palace. So this is actually right in the middle of the old city. So what I was also wanting to do in this trip was, I have heard a lot about these chhatris. So chhatris are essentially the tombs of erstwhile kings and queens, and typically they are not placed that you would find on the itinerary or suggested kind of places, because this is something that is just within the structures of the city. So if there is a old kind of city plan and there is a market starting, there would be a chhatri somewhere in the middle, just along the road. And this is similar to how we find the darwazas in old Delhi. So I wanted to visit a chhatri, and I did, and I was really fascinated with it. It was Krishna temple Chhatri, and just like a lot of beautiful architecture right in the middle of the bustling city. And this was just close to Rajwada Palace. And Rajwada Palace is a famous image that pops up anytime you look up Indore. So
Right.
it's again a beautiful palace which is huge, not in spread only, but also in the rarity and quality of artifacts of heritage that it carefully preserves. So as you enter, there is a temple in the center, and there is a courtyard which is very beautifully structured. So there's a lot of peace, which was very surprising, because outside you have these noisy streets, like a lot of auto rickshaws and old rickshaws passing by, people doing shopping, and as soon as you enter Rajwada Palace, you feel this immense sense of peace and calm. So that was quite fascinating. And so on the ground floor, you have this courtyard kind of an area, and as you go up, you will find the typical museums where there's miniatures of different palaces, the artifact of the royal lineage, and as the name suggests, Rajwada, it tells you the story of kings and the generations that have ruled, and it also houses some really rare artifacts. But obviously, since you're pressed for time, I could not explore it too much detail, but I could definitely have it on my list of further visits to Indore.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, like we touched at the beginning, right? No dearth of historical structures given the different dynasties that ruled here. And primarily, at least in this part of the city, there is a significant influence of the Marathas that you could
Yeah.
come across, right? The Holkars ruled here for a long time. So there's definitely that influence that comes across, be it in the architecture or even be it in the food, right? Like you mentioned
Right.
earlier about poha and jalebi. And even I was very confused as to what sort of a combination is this between flattened rice and then you have jalebi, which is
Sweet.
like very sweet, right? Yeah, apparently it looks like it's Maratha part of the influences on obviously the poha, and then the more Mughal influences jalebis, right? So that way, like a lot of unique influences too that you come across, and I'm sure it's the same with the architecture too, especially with some of the structures that came later on having pretty significant British influence as well. Having spent some time here at Rajwada Palace, what was next on the list of things to cover off?
Interesting that you mentioned the coming together of cultures, because Indore, as with all the cities that have come up like this, with a lot of wealth coming in from different areas, Indore was also a big center of trade, and that's why you have the Sarafa Bazaar, which is the jewelry market, right? So there is also some Marwari kind of influence. There's also Jains, and as I was going further from Rajwada Palace, the last spot in my kind of this afternoon plan was Kaanch Mahal. Now, Kaanch Mahal is as the name suggests, is a palace of glass, and I thought it will be something, with some kind of glass used. But I was so surprised because the entire place is made of glass, right? So it's all mirror work. Even the floor is, made of glass tiled artworks. And first, I was so scared to even step inside. Obviously, you can't, take your shoes, but I was just scared to just step and walk inside, those mirrored floors. And it was just so fascinating. And I was reminded of Sheesh Mahal,
Right.
in Rajasthan, and this was something completely, out of my expectations. So Kaanch Mahal was not something I spent a long time there, because it's just a small structure. But then one must admire the kind of artistry and the kind of precision and the hard work that must go into first making such a place and then maintaining it. So that was Kaanch Mahal, and with that I had covered my decent share of palaces, and I headed back to my room for a afternoon nap. Yeah.
Okay, okay, wonderful. I'm glad that, like, even though there wasn't too much time, you managed to sample different things across the city, be it temples or palaces and a lot of the other structures too. Now, after having a break here, is the final pit stop for the day the very popular Sarafa Bazaar, for sure?
Yeah, so I planned a trip to Sarafa, And it's very funny because when you visit a place which is popular for street food, you don't need to worry about what meals you're going to have, because that the street food constitutes your lunch, dinner, and whatever comes between. So the trip to Sarafa was something that I had already imagined many a times in my head. And when I went there, it was just like, okay, I've seen this place before, and it just reminded me of the celebrated street food markets, be it Lucknow or Delhi's Chandni Chowk. So the traditional jewelry market, as you may know, it which is operating by the day, it just
Yeah.
transforms into the street food market, and many of these vendors or the shopkeepers also, sell the kind of street food things. And this is very fascinating because street food is not really looked down upon here; it's just celebrated in all means and forms. So. But now again, the solo travel problem, right? Like I could not afford to eat a lot, so I had specifically had zeroed it on a couple of places. So after soaking in these sights and sounds, just having a walk. So there's not many streets to cover. There's just two or three, and you can easily walk down the whole area in 30-40 minutes. And after that, I started trying out things. So there is a Joshi flying dahi vada that is quite famous there,
Yeah.
and it's an old place that has been featured, and all the celebrities and food kind of famous chefs have gone there. So that's where I went, and what I liked about Joshi ji was he was so warm, and one expects that when you go to such places it will be crowded, and if you're especially traveling alone. But the owner was so warm and smiling, and despite the crowds, he attended to me, and I was really happy. And obviously, the food itself, it really, as they say, it was worth the hype, because
Yeah.
the kind of mix of sweet and salt, and the spices. It was really great, and I've had many dahi vadas in my life, but this was something new, and I then came to know that why it's so famous. So that was Joshi Vada Pav, and the another place I had planned for was Mr. Bhel Bhandari. Now, this is not a very traditional kind of food place. It really has become popular over the last couple of years. So, what Mr. Bhel Bhandari does is he gives you a most spicy bhel. Right. So he has also featured, I think he came up on a talent show called India's Got Talent. So I have seen many of his videos and vlogs and so on. And while I went there, it was relatively empty, but he was very happy to meet me. And then he was talking about Bangalore, and I was not prepared for such a conversation because I went to try a spicy bhel, and I
Yeah.
asked him about like how did he come up with this. So he used to say that he used to typically sell the bhel puri, right? And everyone used to say that, and I don't know, he makes it very humorous kind of his account, and for the inception of his idea. So he was saying that everyone used to boast to their friends that I can eat spicy, and then they used to say, can you make it a little more spicy? So then he had had enough of it, and then he came up with these levels. Like I think in the states, or in the abroad countries, whenever you see Indian restaurants, they have that spice level index. So maybe he got the inspiration from there. But he basically keeps it like 110 volt, 220, and 440 volts, and all that. So obviously, my family had warned me not to go, you know, to some crazy levels. So I tried the basic, and that was enough for me. It was too spicy. And yeah, I mean, the last thing if you want to have at night is a spicy, plate of bale, then all fours to you. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I ended my this street food tour of Sarafa in Indore.
Yeah, very, very popular, right? There's no dearth of videos you'll find on YouTube if you just type up. Sarafabas are very, very popular. And for me personally, I haven't been to Indore, but it reminded me of a trip I made to Ahmedabad, right? They also have very similar, I don't know which one came first, but basically that is also, I can't remember if it's a jewelry market, but some sort of a market during the day, and during the night it's completely transformed, and a lot of stalls around, and the place is buzzing really, and goes on till I don't know, like 2 in the morning or whatever. So yeah, if you're here, definitely, I think the best way to visit such places would be in a group, right? That way you
Yeah.
can try a lot of things. But if you're by yourself, then obviously plan it out a little bit, or you never know. You'll probably find something that really catches your attention, and maybe that's how you want to play it out too. For me, I saw this. I don't know if I should call it jalebi. It was like, I think they call it jaleba. Right? It was so big, almost the size of a palm paper plate. Right? It's that big. So that was pretty unique to me, and a few different kinds of drinks as well, coconut based and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of unique and quirky types of foods, and it should absolutely be a part of your Indore or MP itinerary if you're making a trip here. And again, depending on how much time you have, you could certainly spend a few hours to even multiple trips, right, if you're looking to explore it at length. Awesome. Is that pretty much the Indore leg of the journey here, Tushar, with the Sarafa market? Yeah.
Yes, Saf. And yeah, like you rightly said, it's very important to, when you travel, you space out the things because Indore is, as you said, famous for Chappan Dukaan and Sarafa. So
Yeah.
obviously you will visit Sarafa in the night, but the good thing about Chappan Dukaan is it opens pretty early in the morning. So the ideal thing to do would be, to space out the two because you're going to have a lot of food and you're going to get tempted a lot. So yeah, if you go in a group, you can really plan your day in a very nice way.
Yeah, I really feel for you that you had to do this solo, but hopefully there's a second time, and I
Definitely.
mean by yourself or with a group, you could travel here. Now, yeah, let's hop on to Ujjain. I'm really looking forward to this, just based on your descriptions and the introduction you gave. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your time there and how you decided to split it up?
Definitely. So I went to Ujjain in a local bus, though after, so what I did was I plan a lot. Sometimes I tend to overplan trips also. So I had pre-booked a bus. But after landing at Indore, I realized that you can also hire a bike because there's not much distance. It just takes you an hour
Right.
from Indore to Ujjain. But nonetheless, I took the local bus and I landed at Ujjain in a very quiet neighborhood at an Airbnb. So, on my bike, I headed out to the main spot of Ujjain, that is the Mahakaleshwar temple. Now, as the listeners might have known, the Mahakaleshwar or the Mahakaal corridor was built or completely renovates the temple complex. It happened, I think, last year around
Right.
May in 2022. And so just give some kind of a background towards the Mahakaleshwar or what's the significance is the Mahakaleshwar Jyotirling is the only south-facing Jyotirling out of the 12 total Jyotirlings. So dedicated to Lord Shiva, who is known to give darshan in form of Mahakal to devotees here. So there's a lot of fascinating stories around Mahakal or the Lord of Time, and like I was speaking in the initial part about Ujjain being the navel of the earth, or the intersection of Tropic of Cancer and the prime meridian. There is an aspect of science around it. There is an aspect of religion, and there's aspect of the dark mystery and the theories that come up. So it has often been explored through books and films. And recently, the film OMG 2,
Yeah.
starring Akshay Kumar. It was actually shot in Ujjain, and I didn't happen to see the film before this trip, but when I came back and saw it, it was just so nice because if you travel somewhere, you see that in a Bollywood film, there's nothing like it. So
Yeah, for sure.
really enjoyed, and obviously it's a little you know. Louder in the movie in terms of things, but I think it really reminded me of this recent travel that I did. So yeah, it has I think been covered in some other books and movies as well. Some fascinating stories about Ujjain is that no king or authoritative figure can stay there overnight because
Yeah.
ever since King Vikramaditya, so Ujjain has historical connections to King Asoka, to the poet Kalidasa, to King Vikramaditya, and because Mahakal, or the form of Lord Shiva here, is known as King of Kings, like Kalon ke
Uh-huh.
Kal. So these are some of the stories around Ujjain. And as you enter the Mahakal corridor, you can there's a lot of since it's a new structure or a new complex, there's a lot of places to easily park your vehicles and then take a good walk. And there's a lot of statues installed there in the corridor, which is essentially a huge open area. There is drinking water spots, there is places to sit. And what I liked here was the logistics, because this is a very popular Jyotirling, but the entire time that it takes to visit is just 30 to 40 minutes on even like afternoon, busy afternoon. So I was able to be done with the darshan and the complete visit in around like 40 minutes. And this is what I liked. And now it also depends, like I said, around the time of the year that you visited.
Right.
Sometimes the Garbhagriha is closed for darshan. In my visit, it was closed too, but the crawling queue can get a view of the sanctum sanctorum. Another thing that is nice here, that the puja is live streamed on screens at various spots inside the complex. Uh, Now, the Mahakal temple is also famous for the Bhasma Aarti that happens at 4 a.m. and it has a special significance in devotees. Again, if you're planning a trip to Ujjain, definitely read up a lot about it, because when you are within your visiting these places, there might be too much knowledge that you might be need to absorb. But a little bit of research and reading about these things can make you get a lot of your 1 day trip here, or 1 or 2 day trip.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, especially to that doing some reading up part, right? Do you also want to touch upon some of the other temples in the vicinity you
Yeah.
might have made stops at?
Yeah, so I was given a long list, but due to the shortage of time, and it also because I need to commute in a bike, I
Right.
try to cover 3 4 temples. So there is a very famous Harsiddhi Mata temple that is again a Shakti Peeth. It's temple of Sati, and it has a significance as we know about the Shakti Peeths. But what's really fascinating about Harsiddhi Mata is outside they have this huge pillar of diyas, and it's lit every evening. So if you're planning to visit the Harsiddhi Mata temple, do try to visit in the evening as well. I visited Chawkhamba temple, the temple of 24 pillars. I definitely wanted to visit Kaal Bhairav temple, so I did that. Now there is a few temples that are towards the outskirts of Ujjain, so you do need to drive a little bit. Though it's a small town, I think you can reach there in about half an hour. But it's a very nice drive, and you can enjoy the outskirts of the city. And like it's almost like a barren land. And when you land up at Kaal Bhairav temple, you end up at Mangalnath temple. Specifically, Kaal Bhairav temple has a significance in terms of a dark connection. So this is the temple of Shiva's devotee. And the interesting thing here was, as a prasad, there is whiskey offered here, because in Hinduism there is concept of 3 types of food. And this god that is worshipped here is known to accept uh, that as the prasad. So I found that really interesting. And the temple complex itself also was quite different. It almost looks like a fortress from outside. So that was Kaal Bhairav temple. So in all, I have covered Mahakal corridor, Harsiddhi Mata temple, Chawkhamba, and Mangalnath. So this was my first half of the day, and I wanted to get a little break before I visit the evening spots.
Yeah.
So in Ujjain, another interesting aspect is the river Shipra. It holds a special significance. It's like how you think of Banaras and the
Right.
river Ganga. Shipra River has a very sacred place in devotees. And definitely one should try and visit the evening aartis that happen here. So there's Ram Ghat. So in the evening, I visited that. And the Mahakal corridor also comes alive beautifully at night with all the lights in place and the fountains. And there is some 3D Aarti shows that you can do. So you just need to put on a headphone, and AR lets you feel that you're actually there, the 360-degree view, and technology enabled kind of temple visit, if we might say that. So yeah, that was my day in Ujjain. Uh, I wanted to call out another thing here is I have a friend in Ujjain who runs a comic book shop. So it was like a very different angle to my already tight visit because I
Yeah.
definitely wanted to visit him. And it's always nice meeting someone local, right? So he told me fascinating tales of how Mahakaal corridor came up, and how he is a firm believer in the spiritual side of it. It was really fascinating because when you are just a tourist, right, you fly into a city, you hire a taxi or a cab or an auto, and you try to visit all the places, look up Google and so on, and then you meet someone local who is an acquaintance, and then he or she tells you their personal connection. So it really makes you derive a lot of value from that travel.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And also, a lot of times you'll be surprised, right? The view you have looking at a place through your lens as an outsider or somebody who's visiting versus the perspective a local brings in, right, to a place. It could like be maybe overlapping a little bit, but sometimes it could be really diametrically opposite. So I enjoy that bit too, hearing from locals, because yeah, they can give you some fascinating insights about places in a city. And just to revisit the earlier part you mentioned about the Kaal Bhairav temple, right? That was also like fairly unique about alcohol or whiskey being offered as offering to the deity, right? I can't remember if it was this or one of the other temples, but they have a significant like a tantric connection
Yeah.
also, right? Tushar, and just reminded me of a conversation we had on the Kamakhya temple in Guwahati. We did an episode sometime back, and that like this is also one of the centers of tantric worship, and like you mentioned, alcohol and meat and fish, etc. Like all of those things being a part of the offering, which you usually don't see or associate to offerings in most other temples in India, right? So
Right.
again, very different from that perspective as well.
Yeah, yeah. Just to add, Kaal Bhairav temple, I have read a bit. So in Banaras also there's a Kaal Bhairav temple, and obviously every place that the temple, and it's fascinating how in India there is different forms of Lord Shiva that are worshipped, right? Like Dakshineshwar or Bholenath or Mahakaal, as in the case of Ujjain. And the Kaal Bhairav temple is, you might require a separate episode on it because it's known to be a portal for dark energies, and it's connected to, the connection of death and Yamraj and uh, the tantric forces. And another interesting factor about how I was talking about the offerings is that in Hinduism there is concept of sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. And I think that's how, though I'm not an expert, I think that's how the two are connected. Like you were saying, about how the offerings change at these places. Another thing I remembered about Mahakal is the another kind of story around how the Jyotirling came to be. So there was a fight between Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu about who's the creator of the world, and there was this Agni Stamp, that is an infinite fire from heaven to deep down below, that was just a continuous form of light. And what Lord Brahma did was he took the Hansa form and tried to climb on top of the fire. Lord Vishnu took the Varaha avatar and tried to go at the bottom, and it just continued infinitely, and out of the fire appear Mahadeva, or the Lord Shiva. And this is how the Jyotirling came to be. So again, Jyotirling and Shakti Peeths are a very interesting concept. It's just so fascinating, right?
Yeah. Again, like you mentioned, I think the stories and the backstories are what make these visits like extra special, right? But I'm glad that even though this was like a packed itinerary, you were able to visit some of the important spots, and I'm sure your friend helped out a little bit too in terms of tailoring this or customizing this itinerary for you, Tushar, or was
Definitely.
it? Okay. Yeah.
My friend also graciously hosted a lunch for me, and Ujjain is famous for its namkeens and sev
Right.
also, right? So there is a Indori sev and there's a Ujjaini sev. So he treated me with all of that. But Ujjain is also famous for dal bafla, which is like a Madhya Pradesh version of dal bati. I don't know if I'll get into trouble for saying that, but dal bafla is like a steamed bati, which is really delicious, and we don't really get it in any other cities, but I think in just some select cities. So that's another aspect that I remember from this trip, because the day one I was just having street food in Indore, and in Ujjain I was treated to this warm, homely lunch. So that was really special as well.
Okay, that's great. And this was pretty much end of day, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
After this, you probably took a quick break. And uh, how was the third day, like the last day of the weekend? You're planning to head back now towards Indore, or what is the plan?
Yeah, so I had to head back to Indore. So after having spent 2 days, very tight roaming different places, I just processed it and took a nice breakfast again of poha, and roamed around the city a bit. Visited my friend, and I had to travel back to Indore. So again, afternoon I was back in Indore, and for the evening flight to Bangalore. And there is some fascinating things that keep happening. So I happened to bump into Raghubir Yadav, the famous
Oh,
actor, at the Indore airport. He had interestingly come there to conduct a film acting class. So then I came to know that he hails from Jabalpur, another city in Madhya Pradesh. Uh,
this
but
was the lead
yeah.
from many popular shows of the yesteryears, and more recently, things like Panchayat, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. I forget what do they call
Sachiv ji,
Sachiv
yeah.
ji, Sachiv ji.
I was actually thinking, was he Sachiv ji or Pradhan ji? But he was such a nice presence. I think I addressed him as Sachiv ji or Pradhan ji, and he was like, Dhanyavad. And he had that typical smile, and it's really nice when you bump into celebrities and they don't like shout at you or something.
Yeah, no, good to know that he was also from MP, like you mentioned, right? I didn't know that. So, yeah, glad that you had a little icing on top of the cake, or cherry on top of the cake, with this little fun encounter with Raghuveer Yadav as well. Now, in terms of other places in the vicinity, right? Again, like we touched upon earlier, this could easily be like a extended itinerary if one wants to. Were there any spots that you'd like to mention to the audience, to the listeners, in terms of someone looking for an extended itinerary of the place? Because also sometimes, because you're maybe coming from like down south or whatever, you may want to have an extended itineraries to such places because of the likelihood of maybe not making a visit there again for a while, right? So in scenarios like that, what other places would you recommend one checks out?
Sure. Now, Madhya Pradesh, as it is full of places, right? And it's
Yeah.
just the sprawl is huge, right? You can go to Sanchi, you can go to Mandu, right? So Orcha, and I'm sure I have heard many of these places in some of your episodes also.
Yeah.
But if you are visiting, right, like for a 3 day or a 4 day period, you must, if you are interested in Jyotirlingas. The second Jyotirlinga situated right in Madhya Pradesh. It's in the Khandwa district. It's Omkareshwar. So it's not really very far. Essentially, on the map, you will see it as a triangle. So from Indore, Ujjain, Omkareshwar is quite accessible. So this is located in Mandhata, which is a river island, and the island itself is in the shape of Om, flanked by the Narmada River. So you can plan a visit to Omkareshwar. There is two temples there. So another temple here is of Mamaleshwar, and it's a very ancient temple that you would be reminded of the classic architectures of ancient India. So again, this is known as the Immortal Lord of the Immortals or Devas. It's located on the southern bank of Narmada River. So I would say if you have another day, you could go to Omkareshwar Island. It's a nice road trip there. There is now another interesting thing that I was just reminded of is there's some nice waterfalls near Ujjain, near Indore. So there is a thing called Bada Talaav, which is an artificial lake. There is an Indira Gandhi Tribal Art Museum, and there is these spots that one can plan near Indore. There's a lot to explore in Madhya Pradesh, but if you are planning to keep Indore as a center of your short trip, you could definitely try out these places.
Yeah, for sure. And we do have a few episodes, be it Mandu, Dhar, Khajuraho, as well on the podcast. We'll make sure to link those. And I remember, I think I'd done these episodes a good 3-4 years ago now. And at that time, I'd said that MP is a really, really underrated place in terms of travel. There's so much in terms of options and even in terms of variety, right? And I think that still holds true to this day.
Definitely.
So I'm glad that we were able to cover off a couple more iconic places within MP in Indore and Ujjain, and again, like even Bhopal for that matter, right?
Yeah, Bhopal,
that has a
Gwalior.
very different feel to it.
Gwalior is also very, I mean, I don't need to say that because it's associated with Hindustani classical music, gharanas, the birthplace of Tansen. There's a classical music fest that gets organized every winter. So I think these are the main cities, right? The centers: Bhopal, Indore, Ujjain, Gwalior. And then there is, like you said, all the different sites: Pachmadi, Orcha, Bundela. The list is endless, Mandu.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Tushar, for taking us through such a wonderful and visual itinerary through Indore and Ujjain and helping cover off some of the important spots. And again, like you mentioned, depending on your taste and your time on hand, it could easily be stretched into a week-long itinerary or even more if one prefers it that way. Now, as we start to wrap up the episode, do you also want to quickly share in terms of how listeners can keep up with some of the work? By saying some of the work, I mean a lot of the different types of things you do, right? Be it the vlog or the blog or the comics and everything. Do you want to share a little bit of that, Tushar?
Yeah, I write on Medium. Primarily go by these 3-4 monikers. So one is Human Projector for more of my writing. I have a YouTube channel for comics that's called Panel Days, and another short YouTube channel called Lens Dynamics. So not really very proficient with making video content, but yeah, in whatever capacity I try to make, I do that. So I've also been working on a year-end favorite movies list, but that's just something that is work in progress from beginning of December, because I'm just finding it tough to get time to wrap that up. It's always a long list. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. We'll make sure to link all of these in the description of the episode so listeners can follow you easily. And yeah, we're really, really glad to have and grateful to have listeners like you, right, who are constant champions and constant supporters of the podcast too. Thanks so much, Tushar, for showing us this heartland of India, right? Like you rightly mentioned in MP and specifically in Indore and Ujjain, and taking us and our listeners on this really visual journey. Looking forward to following all of your work and hopefully having you back on the podcast as well.
Definitely, Saif. We travel practically virtually through all your episodes, and there's definitely more places that will be there to talk about. The list will be infinite, and it was certainly very nice talking to you, and look forward to again connect in the future as well.
Thank you so much, Tushar. Lovely having you.
Thanks, Saif.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.